and welcome to the yearly wrap-up. This year for hardware and code has been pretty chilled. Coding, languages and for the frameworks I work in, nothing really stood out. Definitely nothing worth talking about. For PC hardware, I will say it's been a little bit more interesting, but not mostly not for good reason. Intel's 13th gen and 14th gen blunder with both those lines of desktop CPUs dying faster than they should. Qualcomm releasing unimpressive ARM CPUs, specifically the Snapdragon X Elite that was meant to rival x86 CPUs on a laptop level, which it didn't do. There hasn't been anything that has been released this year CPU-wise that really blew my mind. The Ryzen 7 9800X3D is pretty much the only CPU that stood out for me. Outside of that, Intel has CPU-wise continued to slide downhill. GPU-wise, we are still on Nvidia's RTX 4000 series and AMD's RX 7000 series, and we'll only be seeing new GPUs, I guess, from them, both of them, next year. The most excited, I guess, I've been was for GPUs, was actually for Intel's battlemage. I have to say, if their stats are correct for their Intel's recent release video, they had a couple of graphs up. It doesn't look too bad, specifically for the price point. I mean, we haven't had a GPU at that price point, firstly with 12 gigs of VRAM, that $250 price point I'm talking about, with 12 gigs of VRAM that will or seems to outperform things like the RTX 4060. I mean, it's not a huge card to be compared against, but the fact is if it is beating it by 10-15%, that card comes with only 8 gigs of VRAM and is priced at $300. So I'm hoping the B580 is as good as they say it is. I'm definitely going to get my hands on one. Anyway, to be honest, I found older hardware more interesting this year. I was pretty shocked to discover a lot of old hardware that is still quite functional. Some of it well over, like 10 years old. For example, we did the review on the AMD FX Series and we benchmarked the FX 8350, which can still play games like Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3, 2023, Black Ops 6, Hogwarts Legacy and so on. We did test it with an RTX 3060 Ti to see how much the CPU would bottleneck it, and while it did, the games were still very playable. And you can easily pair that CPU with something like a RX 6600 or a GTX 1060 or RTX 2060, and it's a highly capable CPU. Specifically, in this day and age, it's still able to play the latest games. While we're talking about budget GPUs, let's talk about VRAM. So as we know, 4 gigs of VRAM just does not cut it anymore, especially if you're wanting to play more modern games. Sorry, this might be a bit of a rant, but anyway, you will not have a fun time. You can get by with 6 gigs surprisingly enough, but that is the bare minimum, literally the cutoff. And I know this, I've been playing around with the GTX 1066 gig recently, and you can play the modern titles, obviously everything low, textures low. It's not a fun time, right? And as we know, 8 gigs has become a problem. Every new GPU released, from now on, the minimum should have 10 gigs. Seriously. Anyway, let's dive into the rest of the hardware I tested this year. As I mentioned earlier, we did take a look at the AMD FX Series. Specifically, we benchmarked the FX 8350. By the way, you can find links to all the videos in the video description. We also put together a budget coding and gaming PC build with an Intel 4590, which is actually still quite capable to this day, even with its 4 cores and 4 threads. We paired it with the GTX 1080, which we then upgraded, not the GPU, I'm not talking CPU, we did upgrade the CPU to an Intel i7 4790 non-K. So there are 2 videos around this. Since then, I've actually removed the GTX 1080 and paired that build with a GTX 1066 gig. This is where I've actually been. This is the GPU and the build I've been messing with. I actually leave this build at my parents' place, so when I go there to visit, I don't have to haul my gaming laptop. And even with the GTX 1066 gig, I've been able to play everything like Black Ops 6, Hogwarts Legacy, Stalker 2. Okay, Stalker 2 I only played for like 10 minutes. I'm pretty sure I'll see some stuttering with that CPU and GPU combo. We can also not forget about the Ryzen 1800X video I did, which I also paired with the GTX 1080. While it was a bit fussy with RAM, it's still a solid CPU. As I said in the video, right, I wouldn't recommend buying one now unless you get it for a very low price. After a BIOS update on that motherboard, it also actually still supported rebar. So later in 2025, we will revisit this build along with their Ryzen 1600, but we're going to chuck some more modern GPUs in there to see how those CPUs keep up, especially with the motherboard I'm using now supporting rebar with the BIOS update. I also did that more modern all Intel build, specifically the Intel Lego mod build. Yes, we kept to 12th gen. So that was with a 12400F and a Intel Arc A750 paired with 32 gigs of DDR5 running at 6000 megahertz. That Arc A750 has aged well, often beating GPUs like the RTX 4060, RX 7600. And let's not forget the Lego mod, because that took a lot of work. And yeah, when we get that B580, I plan to replace the A750 in this all Intel build with the B580. Earlier this year I also released some software called Task Marx, a PC systems utilities desktop application that I've built. It provides, it's a hardware monitoring and testing application in short, right? So it provides live stats for PC hardware, supports multi-CPU and GPU setups, RAM stress tests, CPU benchmarks, desktop and gaming overlays for live hardware stats, a custom FPS counter and more. I plan to make it free actually once I hit 1,000 subs. Right now you can buy it for $8 on itch.io. If you're new to the channel and this is your first time watching, check out some of my other videos in the description from this year. They're not too bad, I have to say so myself, and please consider subscribing. For 2025 I do plan to do more videos. For 2024 I released a video every 3 weeks, but next year I plan to do 2 videos a month. Talking about plans for next year, as I said earlier, there's a couple of GPUs I need to get my hands on. So firstly, the B580, the Intel battlemage B580. I'm hoping they release something like a B750 or B770. If they do, I'll be grabbing either one of those. I also need to upgrade my main gaming PC. If you're looking at watching the video and not just listening to it, I've got a bit of a montage of my current PC at the moment. So talking about my main gaming PC, the GPU I'm running in there is an RX 6800, right? So I'm looking at either getting the RX 7900 XT or possibly the RX 8800 XT if the rumors are true, right? As I'm showing my rig here, it's currently running a Ryzen 7 5700X3D with 32 gigs of DDR4 running at 3200 megahertz, that being a G-Skill DDR4 kit. For the CPU cooler, I've got an Asus ROG Rio 120mm AIO water cooler. It's on an Asus Prime B550MK motherboard, all powered by a RAID Max Cobra Series 1000 watt 80 plus gold semi-modular PSU. I think an RX 7900 XT or 8800 XT would be quite a good fit for this current build. I'll probably also need to upgrade the RAM from 32 gigs to 64 gigs. From a coding perspective, I don't think I'll be doing many tutorials. No one really watches them, but there will still be code. I'm currently building a 2D game engine or library from scratch actually, and I'm currently experimenting with things like spatial audio and audio panning for the engine, so I'll definitely be doing some coding videos around that and the rendering and so on. I'm also considering doing a single hardware news video each month, focusing on the latest hardware news and rumors for the month that has just passed. So I think I'm going to be pretty busy with the video, with the channel next year, right? And with that said, I hope the rest of the 2024 goes well for you all, and we'll see you in the new year. I hope you have a great break if you are taking leave and are on holiday, and consider subscribing, and cheers.